In the dusty corridors of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where dreams of military engineers are either forged or shattered, Captain Sarah Chen stood before a panel of stern-faced colonels, her hands steady despite the weight of rejection hanging in the air. It was March 2019, and she had just presented what she believed was a revolutionary bunker design, one that could withstand modern warfare's most devastating weapons while protecting hundreds of soldiers. The response was swift and brutal. Impractical, too expensive, unnecessary complexity. But what those colonels didn't know was that in less than 2 years, Sarah's impractical design would become the difference between life and death for 500 American soldiers stationed in a remote outpost in Eastern Europe. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah Chen's journey to that fateful presentation began long before she ever wore a uniform. Growing up in Seattle as the daughter of a construction worker and a mathematics teacher, she spent her childhood building elaborate fort structures in her backyard. Not with toy blocks, but with actual construction materials her father would bring home. By age 12, she was calculating load-bearing capacities and designing drainage systems for her miniature architectural marvels. Her parents initially worried about their daughter's unusual hobby, but when Sarah's science fair project, a scale model earthquake-resistant building, won the state championship, they realized they were raising someone extraordinary. The path to West Point wasn't easy for Sarah. Despite her exceptional grades and test scores, she faced skepticism from guidance counselors who questioned whether engineering was the right field for her. "Have you considered nursing or teaching?" became a phrase she heard so often, it might as well have been her middle name. But Sarah's determination was unshakable. She spent countless hours studying advanced mathematics and physics, often teaching herself concepts that wouldn't be covered until college. Her bedroom walls were covered not with posters of celebrities, but with blueprints of famous architectural structures and engineering diagrams she'd drawn herself. When Sarah finally received her acceptance letter to West Point in 2011, she thought the hardest part was over. She was wrong. The prestigious military academy, known for producing some of America's finest officers, presented challenges she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the rigorous academic curriculum or the demanding physical training that tested her limits. It was the subtle but persistent doubt from some of her peers and instructors about her capabilities as a future engineer in the male-dominated Corps of Engineers. During her sophomore year, Sarah's structural engineering professor, Colonel Martinez, assigned a project that would unknowingly plant the seeds for her future breakthrough. The assignment was to design a theoretical bunker system that could protect a battalion-sized unit from various threats while maintaining operational effectiveness. Most cadets approached the project conventionally, essentially redesigning existing bunker systems with minor improvements. Sarah, however, took a radically different approach. She spent weeks researching not just military fortifications, but also studying natural protective systems, how certain animals create burrows that can withstand floods, earthquakes, and predator attacks. She analyzed the structure of honeycomb patterns in beehives, the way tree root systems distribute stress loads, and even how prairie dog tunnel systems maintain air circulation in underground networks. Her classmates thought she had lost her mind, spending more time in the biology library than in the engineering lab. But Sarah's unconventional research was leading her towards something revolutionary. She began to envision a bunker system that wasn't just a static concrete box buried in the ground, but rather a dynamic, adaptive structure that could respond to different types of threats. Her design incorporated modular components that could be quickly assembled or reconfigured based on the specific threat environment. The structure would use a honeycomb-inspired internal support system that distributed impact forces across the entire structure rather than concentrating them at specific points. The most innovative aspect of her design was its multi-layered protection system. Instead of relying solely on thick concrete walls, her bunker incorporated layers of different materials, each designed to defeat specific types of weapons. The outer layer was designed to disperse and absorb the energy from explosions, the middle layer provided structural integrity, and the inner layer included advanced shock absorption systems to protect the occupants from the concussive effects of nearby impacts. When Sarah presented her project to Colonel Martinez and the other engineering faculty, the room fell silent. Her presentation lasted 45 minutes, during which she explained not only the technical specifications of her design, but also the biological and mathematical principles that inspired it. She demonstrated through computer simulations how her bunker could withstand direct hits from modern artillery, improvised explosive devices, and even low-yield tactical nuclear weapons while maintaining habitability for extended periods. Colonel Martinez later told Sarah it was the most innovative student project he had seen in 20 years of teaching. Her design earned her the highest grade in the class and caught the attention of several faculty members who encouraged her to pursue advanced studies in structural engineering and military architecture. But more importantly, it gave Sarah the confidence to believe that her unconventional thinking could contribute something meaningful to military engineering. After graduating from West Point in 2015 with highest honors and a degree in civil engineering, Second Lieutenant Sarah Chen was commissioned into the Corps of Engineers with dreams of revolutionizing military construction and fortification. Her first assignment took her to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where she was placed in the 20th Engineer Brigade under the command of Colonel James Morrison, a veteran engineer who had overseen construction projects in Iraq and Afghanistan for over a decade. Colonel Morrison was old-school military, a man who believed that proven methods were proven for a reason and that innovation was often just a fancy word for unnecessary risk. When Sarah arrived at Fort Bragg with her West Point project portfolio and ideas for modernizing military fortifications, Morrison's response was diplomatically dismissive. "Lieutenant Chen," he said during their first meeting, "you'll find that real-world military engineering is quite different from classroom theory. Focus on learning our established procedures before you start trying to reinvent them." Sarah's early assignments were routine and, frankly, frustrating for someone with her ambitions. She designed standard forward operating base layouts, supervised the construction of conventional bunkers and fortifications, and oversaw maintenance projects that any competent engineer could handle. While her work was consistently excellent, she felt like her innovative ideas were being deliberately sidelined. Every time she suggested modifications or improvements to existing designs, she was told that military specifications existed for good reasons and shouldn't be casually altered. The frustration reached a breaking point during a project in late 2016. Sarah's unit was tasked with designing fortifications for a training facility that would simulate combat conditions in Eastern Europe. The specifications called for standard concrete bunkers that, in Sarah's analysis, were woefully inadequate for the types of threats American forces might face in a conflict with a near-peer adversary. Modern artillery systems, guided munitions, and advanced explosives had evolved far beyond what the current bunker designs were meant to withstand. Sarah spent her off-duty time developing an alternative design based on the principles she had explored at West Point, but significantly refined through her 2 years of practical experience. Her new bunker concept incorporated lessons learned from recent conflicts, advances in materials science, and cutting-edge computer modeling that could predict structural performance under various attack scenarios. The design was more complex than standard bunkers, but Sarah's calculations showed it would provide exponentially better protection while using only marginally more materials. When she presented her alternative design to Colonel Morrison, the meeting did not go well. Morrison listened to her presentation with growing irritation, frequently interrupting to question her assumptions and challenge her calculations. "Lieutenant Chen," he said when she finished, "this is exactly the kind of over-engineering that gets people killed in the field. These bunkers are too complex to build quickly, too expensive to deploy widely, and introduce too many potential failure points. We use our current designs because they work. They're proven, and they can be constructed by regular combat engineers without specialized training." Sarah tried to explain that her design actually simplified construction through its modular approach and that the additional protection it provided could save countless lives in a major conflict. But Morrison was unmoved. "The answer is no, Lieutenant. Focus on your assigned duties and stop wasting time on unnecessary innovations." Dejected, but not defeated, Sarah continued to refine her bunker design in her spare time. She reached out to contacts at various defense contractors and research institutions, seeking feedback and validation for her concepts. The responses were encouraging. Several senior engineers at major defense companies were impressed by her work and suggested she consider pursuing graduate studies or transferring to a research position where her innovative thinking would be more appreciated. In early 2017, Sarah applied for and was accepted into a graduate program at MIT, where she could pursue advanced studies in structural engineering while remaining in the Army Reserve. The transition from active duty to reserve status meant leaving Fort Bragg and Colonel Morison's skeptical supervision, but it also meant she could continue developing her ideas in an environment that valued innovation over conformity. At MIT, Sarah threw herself into her research with unprecedented intensity. She was finally surrounded by professors and fellow students who encouraged her unconventional thinking and pushed her to explore the most advanced concepts in structural engineering and material science. Her thesis advisor, Dr. Elena Volkov, was a renowned expert in blast-resistant structures who had consulted on fortification projects around the world. When Sarah shared her bunker design concepts with Dr. Volkov, the professor's eyes lit up with excitement. "Sarah, this is extraordinary work," Dr. Volkov said during one of their weekly meetings. "Your multi-layered approach to threat mitigation is years ahead of current military thinking. Have you considered submitting this for patent protection? There are defense contractors who would pay millions for designs like this." But Sarah wasn't interested in money. She wanted to see her innovations implemented to protect American soldiers. Under Dr. Volkov's guidance, Sarah spent the next 18 months refining her bunker design, conducting extensive computer simulations, building and testing scale models, and developing detailed construction protocols that could be implemented by standard military engineering units. By late 2018, Sarah's bunker design had evolved into something truly revolutionary. The system could be prefabricated in modular components and quickly assembled in the field, providing superior protection while actually simplifying the construction process compared to traditional bunkers. Computer models showed that her design could withstand direct hits from the most advanced conventional weapons, while protecting occupants from blast effects, chemical weapons, and even limited nuclear fallout.
The opportunity Sarah had been waiting for finally arrived in January 2019, when the Army Corps of Engineers announced a competition for next-generation protective structures. The announcement, published in military engineering journals and distributed to defense contractors, called for innovative bunker designs that could provide enhanced protection for forward deployed forces while maintaining rapid deployment capabilities. For Sarah, who had just completed her master's degree at MIT with highest honors, this was the chance she had been preparing for her entire career. The competition brief was comprehensive and challenging. Submitted designs needed to demonstrate protection against a wide range of threats, including conventional artillery, guided munitions, chemical weapons, and improvised explosive devices. Additionally, the bunkers needed to be constructible by standard military engineering units within 72 hours of arrival at a deployment site. The winning design would be considered for implementation across all branches of the military, potentially protecting thousands of American service members in future conflicts. For Sarah, who had just completed her master's degree at MIT with highest honors, this was the chance she had been preparing for her entire career. The competition brief was comprehensive and challenging. Submitted designs needed to demonstrate protection against a wide range of threats, including conventional artillery, guided munitions, chemical weapons, and improvised explosive devices. Additionally, the bunkers needed to be constructible by standard military engineering units within 72 hours of arrival at a deployment site. The winning design would be considered for implementation across all branches of the military, potentially protecting thousands of American service members in future conflicts. Sarah knew this was her moment to prove that her years of research and development had produced something genuinely revolutionary. She spent 3 weeks preparing her submission, creating detailed technical drawings, comprehensive threat analysis reports, and construction protocols that addressed every requirement in the competition brief. Her design had evolved significantly from her original West Point project, incorporating advanced materials like ultra-high-performance concrete, energy-absorbing composite panels, and modular steel framework systems that could be quickly assembled without specialized equipment. The centerpiece of Sarah's submission was a detailed computer simulation showing her bunker design withstanding a direct hit from a 155mm artillery shell, something that would completely destroy a conventional bunker. The simulation, validated by Dr. Volkov and other MIT professors, demonstrated how her multi-layered protection system distributed and absorbed the impact energy, leaving the interior space completely habitable even after such a devastating attack. She also included included time-lapse videos of her construction team assembling a full-scale prototype in just 48 hours, proving that the design's complexity didn't translate into construction difficulties. When Sarah submitted her competition entry in February 2019, she felt confident that her design represented a genuine breakthrough in military engineering. The technical specifications were solid, the construction protocols were proven, and the potential impact on soldier safety was undeniable. She had addressed every concern that Colonel Morrison and other skeptics had raised over the years, creating a design that was both innovative and practical. The competition judging process took 6 weeks, during which time Sarah tried to focus on her reserve duties and part-time consulting work, but found it difficult to concentrate on anything other than the pending results. She knew that dozens of major defense contractors had submitted designs, many backed by teams of engineers with decades of experience and unlimited research budgets. As an individual competitor with only her MIT resources and personal savings behind her, Sarah was definitely the underdog. The notification came on March 15, 2019, in the form of an official letter inviting her to present her design to a panel of senior Corps of Engineers officers at Fort Leonard Wood. Sarah's heart raced as she read the letter. She had made it to the final round of competition, along with just 4 other designs selected from over 100 submissions. The presentation was scheduled for March 28th, giving her less than 2 weeks to prepare for what would undoubtedly be the most important presentation of her career. Sarah spent those 2 weeks in intensive preparation, creating presentation materials that would effectively communicate her design's revolutionary capabilities to an audience of senior military officers. She knew that many of these officers would be naturally skeptical of innovations that challenged established military procedures, so her presentation needed to be absolutely flawless. She practiced her delivery dozens of times, memorizing not just her planned remarks, but also anticipated questions and potential objections. The presentation was held in a sterile conference room at Fort Leonard Wood's headquarters building, with 5 colonels and 2 brigadier generals sitting behind a long table, their expressions giving away nothing about their thoughts or preferences. Sarah was the 4th presenter of the day, following 3 major defense contractors whose presentations had been polished, professional, and thoroughly conventional. When her turn came, Sarah approached the podium knowing that this was her one chance to convince the military establishment that revolutionary change was not just possible, but necessary. Her presentation began with a sobering analysis of current threat environments and the inadequacy of existing protective structures. Using recent conflict data and intelligence assessments, Sarah demonstrated that American forces were increasingly likely to face sophisticated weapon systems that could easily defeat conventional bunkers. Then, she introduced her design concept, explaining how biological inspiration and advanced materials science led to a bunker system that provided exponentially better protection while actually simplifying construction and reducing cost. The technical portion of her presentation was masterful. Sarah walked the panel through detailed computer simulations, scale model test results, and construction time trials that proved every aspect of her design's superiority. She addressed potential concerns about complexity, cost, and field deployability with comprehensive data and analysis. For 45 minutes, she presented what was arguably the most innovative military engineering proposal the Corps had seen in decades. When Sarah finished her presentation, the room was silent for several long seconds. Then the questions began. And they were pointed and skeptical. The colonels challenged her cost estimates, questioned her materials choices, and expressed doubt about the ability of regular engineering units to construct such a complex system. Sarah answered every question with detailed technical explanations and supporting data, but she could sense the panel's reluctance to embrace such a radical departure from established practices.
The rejection letter arrived exactly 2 weeks after Sarah's presentation at Fort Leonard Wood, delivered with the cold efficiency that military bureaucracy was famous for. After careful consideration, the evaluation panel has determined that your submitted design does not meet the current operational requirements for military fortification systems. The letter continued with generic language about appreciating her innovative thinking, while concluding that more conventional approaches better serve the immediate needs of deployed forces. Sarah read the letter 3 times.
each reading making the words no less devastating. She had poured 4 years of her life into developing what she knew was a superior bunker design, only to watch it dismissed by the same institutional thinking that had frustrated her throughout her military career. The winning design, she later learned through informal channels, was a marginally improved version of existing bunkers submitted by a major defense contractor, safe, conventional, and ultimately inadequate for the threats American soldiers would face in future conflicts. The rejection stung not just professionally, but personally. Sarah had grown up believing that the military rewarded merit and innovation, that the best ideas would naturally rise to the top in an institution dedicated to protecting American lives. The reality, she was learning, was far more complex. Military procurement systems favored familiar solutions from established contractors over revolutionary innovations from unknown sources, regardless of their technical superiority. In the weeks following her rejection, Sarah found herself questioning whether she had chosen the right career path. Her MIT professors encouraged her to pursue a position with a private defense contractor, where her innovations would be more valued, and several companies had already reached out about potential employment opportunities. The financial incentives were substantial. Major contractors were offering starting salaries that would triple her current military pay, along with signing bonuses and research budgets that would allow her to pursue her most ambitious projects. But leaving the military felt like giving up on her original mission of directly serving American soldiers. Sarah had joined the Corps of Engineers to build things that would protect her fellow service members, not to design systems that would ultimately be sold back to the military at inflated prices by profit-driven corporations. The idea of abandoning her military career just when her innovations were most needed felt like a betrayal of everything she had worked toward. Instead of accepting any of the corporate offers, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She would remain in the Army Reserve while pursuing a doctoral degree in structural engineering, using her research time to further refine her bunker design and develop new innovations in military architecture. If the current military establishment wasn't ready for her ideas, she would continue developing them until circumstances demanded the kind of revolutionary thinking she represented. Sarah's doctoral program at Stanford University provided the perfect environment for advancing her research. Her advisor, Dr. Michael Rodriguez, was a former Air Force officer who had transitioned to academia after 20 years of military service, bringing a unique understanding of both cutting-edge engineering and military operational requirements. Under his guidance, Sarah expanded her research beyond bunker design to explore broader concepts of adaptive military architecture and rapid deployment protective systems. The research was groundbreaking. Sarah developed new composite materials that could provide superior blast protection while remaining light enough for air transport. She created modular construction systems that could be assembled by non-specialized personnel in minimal time. Most importantly, she began developing artificial intelligence systems that could optimize bunker configurations based on specific threat environments and terrain conditions. By late 2019, Sarah's bunker design had evolved into something far more sophisticated than her original concept. The new system incorporated real-time threat assessment capabilities, automated construction guidance systems, and adaptive protection modules that could be reconfigured as threat conditions changed. Computer simulations showed that her latest design could protect occupants from threats that hadn't even been imagined when she first started her research. Despite her academic success, Sarah remained connected to military operations through her reserve duties and informal networks of military engineers who shared her frustration with outdated procurement systems. Through these connections, she began hearing increasingly concerning reports about the vulnerability of American forces deployed in forward positions around the world. Intelligence assessments suggested that potential adversaries were developing weapons systems specifically designed to defeat existing American fortifications. The situation became particularly acute in Eastern Europe, where American forces were establishing forward operating bases as part of NATO deterrence operations. The bases were being constructed using standard military fortification designs that, according to Sarah's analysis, would provide minimal protection against the advanced artillery and missile systems that potential adversaries had deployed in the region. Military engineers working on these projects privately expressed concerns about their ability to adequately protect the soldiers who would occupy these vulnerable positions. In early 2020, Sarah received an unexpected phone call from Colonel Martinez, her former West Point professor who had first recognized the potential of her bunker design. Martinez had been following Sarah's career and research with great interest, and he was calling with disturbing news from the Pentagon. Intelligence reports indicated that tensions in Eastern Europe were escalating rapidly, and military planners were increasingly concerned about the vulnerability of American forces deployed in the region. "Sarah, I need to ask you a hypothetical question," Colonel Martinez said during their conversation. "If you were tasked with protecting a battalion of American soldiers in a forward operating base that was likely to come under sustained artillery attack from a near-peer adversary, what would you recommend?" The question really wasn't hypothetical, and both Sarah and Colonel Martinez knew it. American forces in Eastern Europe were increasingly likely to face exactly that scenario, and the current fortification systems would be woefully inadequate for such a threat environment. Sarah's response was immediate and unequivocal. "Sir, they need my bunker system. Nothing else currently available would provide adequate protection under those conditions."
Colonel Martinez's follow-up question changed everything. How quickly could you have a working system ready for deployment? Sarah's mind raced as she considered the logistics of transitioning her research from academic theory to operational reality. Her latest design existed primarily in computer simulations and scale models, but she had also been working with a small team of graduate students to construct a full-scale prototype at Stanford's engineering facility. "Give me 6 months and I can have a complete system ready for field testing," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. "But sir, I need you to understand that implementing this system will require convincing a lot of people who have already rejected these concepts once before." Colonel Martinez was quiet for several seconds before responding. "Sarah, I'm going to share some classified information with you, and I need your absolute discretion. The situation in Eastern Europe is deteriorating faster than public reports indicate. Intelligence assessments suggest that we may have American forces under direct fire within the next 12 to 18 months. If that happens with our current fortification systems, we could be looking at casualty numbers that haven't been seen since World War II. The gravity of Colonel Martinez's words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had always understood that her bunker design was about protecting American lives, but the abstract concept of improved soldier protection suddenly became very real and immediate. Somewhere in Eastern Europe, American soldiers were constructing forward operating bases using fortification systems that Sarah knew would fail catastrophically under modern weapons fire. "What do you need from me?" Sarah asked, already knowing that her comfortable academic research life was about to become significantly more complicated. "I need you to activate your reserve commission and report to Fort Leonard Wood within 2 weeks. I've convinced the Pentagon to authorize a crash program for advanced fortification development. You'll be working directly under my supervision with unlimited resources and the authority to requisition whatever materials, personnel, or equipment you need. The only requirement is that you deliver a deployable bunker system within 6 months." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Sarah prepared to leave Stanford and transition from academic researcher to active military engineer. She arranged for her doctoral research to continue under Dr. Rodriguez's supervision while she was on active duty, ensuring that her years of work wouldn't be lost. More importantly, she began assembling a team of engineers, material scientists, and construction specialists who could help her translate her theoretical designs into operational reality. Sarah's team at Fort Leonard Wood was unlike any military engineering unit that had ever been assembled. In addition to traditional Army engineers, she had been authorized to recruit civilian experts from major universities and defense contractors. Her team included specialists in advanced materials, computer modeling, construction automation, and battlefield logistics. The Pentagon had also provided her with an unlimited research budget and priority access to any materials or equipment she requested. The urgency of the project was evident in every aspect of the operation. Sarah's team worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, knowing that every day of delay potentially meant American soldiers would face combat situations with inadequate protection. The pressure was immense, but it also provided the kind of motivation that Sarah had never experienced in her previous military assignments. For the first time in her career, she was working on a project where the military establishment was fully committed to implementing her innovations. The construction of the first full-scale prototype began in April 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic was beginning to disrupt military operations worldwide. The pandemic actually worked in Sarah's favor, as many military construction projects were being delayed or canceled, freeing up resources and personnel for her urgent bunker development program. Additionally, the global supply chain disruptions forced Sarah's team to develop innovative solutions for sourcing materials and components, ultimately making her bunker system more adaptable and resilient. The construction of the first full-scale prototype was a masterpiece of military engineering efficiency. Using advanced prefabrication techniques and modular assembly systems that Sarah had developed during her academic research, her team was able to complete a full-scale bunker in just 36 hours, half the time that traditional bunker construction required. More importantly, testing showed that the new bunker could withstand direct hits from weapons that would completely destroy conventional fortifications. The breakthrough moment came during blast testing in June 2020, when Sarah's bunker prototype was subjected to a simulated artillery strike using explosives equivalent to a 155mm high explosive shell. Traditional bunkers had failed catastrophically under similar tests, but Sarah's design absorbed the blast energy through its multi-layered protection system, leaving the interior completely intact and inhabitable. Military observers who witnessed the test were stunned by the performance difference between Sarah's innovation and existing systems. Word of the successful testing spread quickly through military engineering circles, reaching the attention of Pentagon planners who were increasingly concerned about force protection in potential conflict zones. By August 2020, Sarah received authorization to begin production of bunker components for operational deployment, marking the first time in her military career that her innovations were being implemented rather than dismissed. The production phase presented its own challenges. Sarah's bunker system was more complex than traditional fortifications, requiring specialized manufacturing techniques and quality control procedures that didn't exist in the military standard construction protocols. She had to develop entirely new supply chains for advanced materials, train manufacturing personnel and specialized assembly techniques, and create quality assurance systems that could ensure each bunker would perform exactly as designed under combat conditions. Despite these challenges, by December 2020, Sarah's team had successfully produced and tested 50 complete bunker systems, each capable of protecting up to 12 soldiers from the most advanced conventional weapons. The bunkers were ready for deployment, but Sarah still didn't know where they would be needed or when they would be put to their ultimate test.
The call came at 3:47 a.m. on January 15th, 2021, jolting Sarah from a restless sleep in her quarters at Fort Leonard Wood. Colonel Martinez's voice was tense as he delivered the news that Sarah had been simultaneously dreading and anticipating for months. Sarah, we need your bunkers deployed to Forward Operating Base Sentinel in Ukraine within 72 hours. Intelligence indicates that Russian forces are positioning advanced artillery systems within striking distance of the base, and current fortifications are assessed as inadequate for the threat level. FOB Sentinel was one of several forward operating bases that NATO had established in eastern Ukraine as part of the alliance's deterrent strategy following Russia's increased military activities in the region. The base housed approximately 500 American soldiers from the 3rd Armored Brigade Combat Team, along with supporting units and NATO allies. Located just 40 kilometers from areas controlled by Russian-backed forces, Sentinel was considered one of the most vulnerable American military positions in the world. Sarah had studied the intelligence assessments of FOB Sentinel during her bunker development program, and she knew that the base's current fortifications were woefully inadequate for the threat environment. The soldiers at Sentinel were protected by standard concrete bunkers and earthwork fortifications that had been designed for insurgency-type conflicts, not for sustained artillery bombardment from sophisticated weapon systems. If Russian forces decided to attack FOB Sentinel, the current fortifications would provide minimal protection against modern artillery, guided munitions, and rocket systems. The deployment of Sarah's advanced bunker systems to FOB Sentinel would be the largest and most complex military engineering operation she had ever been involved in. 50 complete bunker systems, along with all the specialized equipment needed for their assembly, would need to be transported from Fort Leonard Wood to Ukraine in less than 3 days. Additionally, Sarah would need to deploy with a team of technicians and engineers to oversee the construction process and ensure that each bunker was properly assembled according to her specifications. The logistical challenges were enormous. Each bunker system consisted of over 200 individual components, ranging from massive steel framework pieces to sophisticated electronic systems for threat detection and environmental control. The total weight of materials for 50 bunkers exceeded 3,000 tons, requiring multiple cargo aircraft for transportation. More critically, many of the bunker components were classified as sensitive military technology, requiring special handling and security procedures throughout the deployment process. Sarah's deployment team consisted of 24 military engineers and civilian specialists, each trained in specific aspects of bunker assembly and testing. The team included experts in foundation preparation, modular construction, advanced materials installation, and electronic systems integration. Additionally, Sarah had arranged for emergency supplies of critical components to be pre-positioned in Poland, providing backup materials in case any bunker systems were damaged during transport or initial assembly. The flight to Ukraine was Sarah's first deployment to a potential combat zone, and the reality of the situation became clear as their aircraft approached the landing zone. FOB Sentinel was surrounded by defensive positions, electronic warfare systems, and constant air patrols designed to detect and deter potential attacks. The soldiers at the base were clearly operating under high stress, knowing that they were positioned directly in the path of potential Russian aggression. Colonel James Mitchell, the commanding officer of FOB Sentinel, met Sarah's team as they landed and immediately made clear the urgency of the situation. Captain Chen, using Sarah's recently promoted rank, intelligence indicates that Russian artillery units have moved into positions where they could target this base within the next 2 weeks. We need your bunkers operational as quickly as possible because conventional wisdom suggests that if shooting starts, we're going to be in the middle of it. The construction of Sarah's advanced bunker systems at FOB Sentinel began immediately, with work continuing around the clock under floodlights and security patrols. Sarah's team had refined their assembly procedures during training at Fort Leonard Wood, but constructing the bunkers in a potential combat zone presented unique challenges. Security requirements limited the movement of personnel and equipment. Ukrainian winter weather created difficult working conditions, and the constant awareness of potential enemy surveillance added stress to an already demanding construction process. Despite these challenges, Sarah's team demonstrated the effectiveness of their modular construction approach. The first bunker was completed in just 28 hours, significantly faster than even their training exercises had achieved. The acceleration came from improvements Sarah had made to the assembly process based on lessons learned during prototype testing, including better organization of components, improved tool systems, and streamlined quality control procedures. As more bunkers were completed, Sarah began training FOB Sentinel's military engineers in basic maintenance and operational procedures for the new systems. The bunkers included sophisticated environmental control systems, communications equipment, and structural monitoring systems that required regular maintenance and calibration. Sarah wanted to ensure that the soldiers who would depend on these bunkers understood how to maintain and operate them effectively. By February 10, 2021, all 50 of Sarah's advanced bunker systems were operational at FOB Sentinel, providing protected accommodation for the entire garrison, plus essential command and control facilities. The bunkers were integrated into the base's defensive plan with firing positions, communication links, and supply routes designed to maintain operational effectiveness even under sustained bombardment. For the first time in her military career, Sarah could see her innovations actively protecting American soldiers in a real-world threat environment. But the ultimate test of Sarah's bunker design was still to come, and it would arrive sooner than anyone expected.
The first indication that something was wrong came at 4:23 a.m. on February 18, 2021, when electronic warfare systems at FOB Sentinel detected unusual communications traffic from Russian-controlled territory. Sarah was in the base communications center, conducting routine system checks on the bunker monitoring equipment when the intelligence officer on duty received an urgent message from NATO intelligence headquarters. Russian artillery units were moving into final firing positions and appeared to be preparing for an imminent attack on FOB Sentinel. The base immediately shifted to highest alert status, with all personnel ordered to their assigned protective positions. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized that her bunker systems were about to face their first real-world test under actual combat conditions. All the computer simulations, scale model testing, and prototype evaluations had led to this moment. 500 American soldiers would depend on her innovations for their survival. Colonel Mitchell's voice echoed across the base's communication system as he announced the situation to all personnel. "This is the commanding officer. Intelligence indicates that we may come under artillery attack within the next few hours. All personnel are ordered to move immediately to assigned protective positions and remain there until further notice. This is not a drill." Sarah watched from the command bunker as soldiers across the base moved quickly but calmly to their assigned positions in her advanced bunker systems. Years of training and preparation were evident in their disciplined response to the threat, but Sarah could see the concern in their faces as they realized they were about to experience combat for the first time. Many of these soldiers were barely out of their teens, far from home, and now facing the reality of modern warfare. The waiting was the hardest part. For 6 hours, FOB Sentinel remained on highest alert status, while intelligence reports continued to indicate that Russian forces were preparing to attack FOB Sentinel. Sarah spent this time moving between bunker systems, checking monitoring equipment, and ensuring that all protective systems were operating at peak efficiency. Her bunker monitoring systems showed that each structure was ready to protect its occupants from the most sophisticated weapons that Russian forces could deploy against them. At 10:47 a.m., the base's counter-artillery radar detected the first incoming projectiles. "Incoming! Incoming! All personnel take cover!" echoed across the base's communication system as soldiers dove into Sarah's bunkers and sealed the protective entrances. Sarah was in Bunker 7 with 12 soldiers from the 3rd Armored Brigade when the first 152mm artillery shells began impacting the base. The sound was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced, a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the very earth beneath them. Even inside her advanced bunker system, the concussive effects of nearby explosions were intense enough to make her ears ring and her vision blur.
But the bunker held. The multi-layered protection system she had designed absorbed and dispersed the explosive energy exactly as her computer models had predicted, maintaining structural integrity even as conventional fortifications across the base were being systematically destroyed. The artillery bombardment continued for 3 hours and 47 minutes, the longest sustained attack on American forces since the Vietnam War. Russian forces fired over 400 artillery shells, guided rockets, and mortar rounds at FOB Sentinel, using a combination of high-explosive, cluster, and thermobaric warheads designed to maximize casualties and destroy fortified positions. The attack was clearly intended to demonstrate Russian military capabilities and test NATO's resolve to defend forward-deployed forces. Inside Bunker 7, Sarah monitored her bunker system's performance through a network of sensors and communication links she had installed throughout the base. The data streaming across her tablet screen told an incredible story. While conventional structures across the base were being obliterated, her bunker systems were performing flawlessly. The sophisticated monitoring equipment showed that despite multiple direct hits, the bunkers were maintaining their protective integrity and keeping their occupants safe from blast effects, fragmentation, and toxic gases. The most dramatic moment came during the second hour of the bombardment when a Russian 152mm shell scored a direct hit on Bunker 12. The explosion was massive, visible even through the small periscope windows of Sarah's bunker. And for several terrifying seconds, communication with Bunker 12 was lost. Sarah's heart stopped as she imagined the worst-case scenario, that her design had finally met a weapon it couldn't withstand, and that 12 American soldiers had just paid the price for her engineering calculations. But then Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system from Bunker 12. "Command, this is Bunker 12. We took a direct hit, but the bunker held. All personnel are safe and accounted for. Repeat, all personnel are safe and accounted for." The relief in Sarah's bunker was palpable as soldiers who had been holding their breath for those terrifying seconds finally exhaled and realized that Sarah's over-engineered bunker design had just saved their comrades' lives. As the bombardment continued, Sarah's bunker systems proved their superiority again and again. Conventional sandbag positions and standard concrete bunkers across the base were reduced to rubble, but her advanced bunker systems continued to protect their occupants even under sustained fire. The computer monitoring system showed that while the bunkers were absorbing tremendous amounts of explosive energy, their structural integrity remained well within safe parameters. The psychological impact of the bunker's performance was almost as important as their physical protection. Soldiers who might have been paralyzed with fear in conventional bunkers remained calm and focused, knowing that they were protected by systems that had been specifically designed to withstand exactly this type of attack. Several soldiers later reported that Sarah's environmental control systems, which maintained comfortable temperature and air quality even during the bombardment, helped them stay alert and ready to respond if the attack escalated to a ground assault. When the artillery fire finally stopped at 2:34 p.m., the silence was as much as shocking as the bombardment had been. Sarah's ears continued ringing from the concussive effects of nearby explosions, but she was amazed to realize that she and the soldiers in her bunker had survived 3 hours and 47 minutes of sustained artillery fire without a single injury. Across the base, similar reports were coming in from all 50 of her bunker systems. Despite taking multiple direct hits and enduring the most intense artillery bombardment American forces had faced in decades, every single soldier at FOB Sentinel had survived.
The aftermath of the bombardment revealed the full extent of Sarah's achievement. As soldiers cautiously emerged from her bunker systems to assess the damage, the contrast between her protected structures and the conventional fortifications was stark and undeniable. Every traditional bunker, sandbagged position, and concrete fortification at FOB Sentinel had been destroyed or severely damaged. Buildings that hadn't been directly hit were riddled with shrapnel holes and blast damage that would have been fatal to anyone inside. But Sarah's 50 advanced bunker systems stood virtually intact, their modular armor panels scarred but unbroken, their structural frameworks undamaged despite absorbing tremendous explosive forces. The honeycomb-inspired internal support systems had distributed impact loads exactly as Sarah had designed them to, preventing the catastrophic structural failures that had destroyed conventional fortifications throughout the base.
Colonel Mitchell's voice was filled with emotion as he addressed the base over the communication system. All personnel, this is the commanding officer. Preliminary reports indicate 0 casualties from the bombardment. Repeat, 0 casualties. All soldiers are accounted for and safe. The cheers that erupted from bunkers across the base were audible even over the communication system, as 500 American soldiers realized they had survived what should have been a devastating attack. Sarah's hands trembled as she began collecting data from the bunker monitoring systems, documenting the performance of each structure during the bombardment. The numbers were almost too good to believe. Her bunkers had withstood forces far exceeding her original design specifications, protecting their occupants from weapons effects that would have been fatal in conventional fortifications. Bunker 12, which had taken a direct hit from a 152mm shell, showed structural damage but remained fully operational and habitable. The immediate priority was damage assessment and preparation for potential follow-up attacks. Sarah worked with base engineers to inspect each bunker system, checking for structural damage, testing environmental systems, and ensuring that all protective capabilities remained intact. The inspection process revealed the sophistication of her design. Even bunkers that had taken multiple hits showed only superficial damage to their outer armor layers, while their inner protective systems remained completely functional. Media reports of the attack began circulating within hours, as news organizations around the world reported on the first sustained artillery attack against American forces in decades. Initial reports focused on the fact that American soldiers had come under fire, but within 24 hours, the story had shifted to focus on the remarkable fact that despite intense bombardment, there had been 0 casualties at FOB Sentinel. Military analysts who understood the severity of the attack were amazed that an entire battalion had survived such an intense bombardment without a single soldier being injured. Pentagon officials arrived at FOB Sentinel within 48 hours of the attack, including several general officers who wanted to personally assess the performance of Sarah's bunker systems. Brigadier General Patricia Williams, the Corps of Engineers' senior officer for European operations, spent hours examining the bunkers and reviewing performance data with Sarah. "Colonel Chen," she said after completing her inspection, "this is the most significant advance in force protection that I've seen in 30 years of military service." The political implications of the attack and its aftermath were enormous. Russian forces had clearly intended to inflict massive casualties on American forces as a demonstration of their military capabilities and a warning against further NATO expansion in Eastern Europe. Instead, their attack had demonstrated the superiority of American military engineering and the effectiveness of Sarah's innovative approach to soldier protection. The fact that 500 American soldiers had survived sustained artillery fire without casualties became a powerful symbol of American military technological superiority. Sarah found herself thrust into an uncomfortable spotlight as word of her bunker system's performance spread throughout the military and defense establishment. Officers who had previously dismissed her innovations as impractical were now requesting detailed briefings on her design concepts. Defense contractors who had competed against her in the original bunker competition were suddenly interested in licensing her technologies and hiring her as a consultant. But the attention that meant the most to Sarah came from the soldiers whose lives her bunkers had saved. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez from Bunker 12 approached Sarah during the damage assessment process and said simply, "Ma'am, I don't know what I'm supposed to say to someone who saved my life, but thank you." Similar conversations occurred throughout the day as soldiers realized that Sarah's engineering innovations had been the difference between survival and catastrophe. The technical data from the bombardment provided invaluable information for future bunker development. Sarah's monitoring systems had recorded detailed measurements of blast pressures, structural stresses, and environmental conditions throughout the attack, creating a comprehensive database of real-world performance under extreme conditions. This data would be used to refine and improve her bunker designs, making them even more effective at protecting soldiers in future conflicts.
Within a week of the attack, Sarah received orders to return to the United States for debriefing and to begin immediate expansion of her bunker production program. The Pentagon had authorized construction of 500 additional bunker systems for deployment to forward operating bases around the world, and Sarah was being promoted to major and given command of the new Advanced Fortification Development Program. As Sarah prepared to leave FOB Sentinel, she took one last look at the bunkers that had proven her theories under the ultimate test conditions. The structures stood as monuments to the power of innovative thinking and the importance of challenging established military doctrine when soldiers' lives were at stake. What had begun as a rejected proposal by a young lieutenant had become a revolutionary advancement in military engineering that would protect American soldiers for generations to come. The flight back to the United States gave Sarah time to reflect on the extraordinary journey that had led from her childhood fort building in Seattle to saving 500 soldiers in a Ukrainian forward operating base. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. Her bunker design was only one example of how innovative thinking could revolutionize military capabilities and better protect the soldiers who served their country in harm's way.
Sarah's return to the United States marked the beginning of a new chapter in her military career, one that would see her innovations transform from battlefield success to military standard practice. The plane carrying her back from Ukraine also transported detailed documentation of her bunker system's performance, computer files containing months of sensor data, and preliminary reports that would fundamentally change how the American military approached force protection. At Andrews Air Force Base, Sarah was met by Colonel Martinez and a delegation of senior Pentagon officials who had been tracking the FOB Sentinel incident with intense interest. The attack and its aftermath had become a case study in military circles, demonstrating both the vulnerability of conventional fortifications and the potential of advanced engineering to protect American lives under extreme conditions. Sarah, what you accomplished in Ukraine is going to change everything, Colonel Martinez said as they rode toward the Pentagon for Sarah's first high-level briefing. The Joint Chiefs want a complete assessment of your bunker system's performance, and they want to know how quickly we can implement similar protection for every forward-deployed unit in the American military. The Pentagon briefing was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her military career. She found herself in a secure conference room with generals from all service branches, senior civilian defense officials, and representatives from the National Security Council. These were the people who made decisions about American military capabilities and force structure, and they were all intensely interested in understanding how her bunker design had achieved such remarkable results. Sarah's presentation lasted 3 hours, during which she walked the assembled officials through every aspect of her bunker design, from the biological inspiration that had informed her structural concepts to the advanced material science that made her protection systems possible. She presented detailed analyses of the bunker system's performance during the Russian artillery attack, including computer simulations showing how conventional bunkers would have performed under identical conditions. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Computer models showed that if FOB Sentinel had been protected by conventional bunkers, casualties from the Russian artillery attack would have exceeded 60%, with over 300 American soldiers killed or wounded. Sarah's advanced bunker systems had reduced casualties to 0, representing a 100% improvement in force protection effectiveness compared to existing military standards. General Patricia Williams, who had personally inspected the bunkers at FOB Sentinel, provided additional context for Sarah's achievement. The artillery bombardment that FOB Sentinel endured was more intense than anything American forces faced during the height of combat operations in Iraq or Afghanistan. Captain Chen's bunker systems didn't just perform well under extreme conditions, they performed perfectly under conditions that would have been catastrophic for any other protective system. The strategic implications of Sarah's success were immediately apparent to everyone in the room. American military strategy increasingly relied on forward-deployed forces operating in contested environments where they might face sophisticated weapon systems operated by near-peer adversaries. If these forces forces could be protected by bunker systems that provided near-perfect protection against conventional weapons, it would fundamentally alter the strategic calculus of potential adversaries considering attacks on American forces. Within days of Sarah's Pentagon briefing, she received notification of her promotion to major and assignment as commanding officer of the newly created Advanced Fortification Development Center at Fort Leonard Wood. Her mission was to oversee immediate expansion of bunker production while continuing research and development of next-generation protective systems for all branches of the military. The production expansion was massive in scope and urgency. The Pentagon had authorized construction of 2,000 additional bunker systems within 18 months, with initial deployments prioritized for the most vulnerable forward operating bases around the world. Sarah would oversee a team of over 200 engineers, technicians, and support personnel, along with contracts with dozens of specialized manufacturers and suppliers. But the expansion also presented significant challenges. Sarah's original bunker design had been developed for specific threat environments and operational requirements, and adapting the system for deployment in different climates, terrain conditions, and threat scenarios required extensive additional research and testing. Additionally, training military engineers to construct and maintain the advanced bunker systems would require developing entirely new educational curricula and certification programs. Sarah's first priority was establishing quality control procedures that would ensure every bunker system met the exacting standards that had made her FOB Sentinel deployment so successful. The bunker's effectiveness depended on precise manufacturing tolerances, correct assembly procedures, and regular maintenance protocols that were far more demanding than those required for conventional military construction. The Advanced Fortification Development Center became a hub of innovation that attracted some of the most talented engineers and scientists in the military and defense industry. Sarah recruited specialists in material science, computer modeling, automation systems, and advanced manufacturing techniques, creating a multidisciplinary team capable of pushing the boundaries of military engineering. Research and development efforts focused on adapting Sarah's bunker concepts for different military applications. She developed specialized versions for Arctic environments, desert conditions, and maritime deployment scenarios. They created modular systems that could be reconfigured for different unit sizes and mission requirements, and they began exploring integration with advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. Perhaps most importantly, Sarah's team began developing training programs that would ensure military engineers around the world could effectively construct and maintain the advanced bunker systems. The training programs included hands-on construction exercises, computer-based learning modules, and certification processes that would guarantee consistent quality standards regardless of where the bunkers were deployed. As word of Sarah's success spread throughout the military, she began receiving requests for briefings and consultations from allied nations interested in implementing similar protective systems for their own forces. NATO allies in particular were eager to understand how Sarah's innovations could enhance their own force protection capabilities in the increasingly contested security environment of Eastern Europe. The transformation from rejected innovator to military game changer had happened with stunning speed, but Sarah remained focused on the fundamental mission that had driven her throughout her career, protecting the soldiers who served their country in dangerous places.
By the summer of 2021, Sarah's Advanced Fortification Development Center had become the most closely watched military engineering facility in the world. Representatives from allied nations, defense contractors, and academic institutions regularly visited Fort Leonard Wood to observe the production of bunker systems that had revolutionized military force protection. The center operated around the clock, with multiple production lines manufacturing different components of Sarah's modular bunker design. The scale of the operation was staggering. Each day, the center produced enough bunker components to construct 12 complete protective systems, with finished bunkers being shipped to forward operating bases across 6 continents. The production process had evolved far beyond Sarah's original prototype construction, incorporating advanced manufacturing techniques, automated quality control systems, and streamlined logistics that could deliver complete bunker systems anywhere in the world within 96 hours of request. Sarah's role had evolved from hands-on engineer to strategic leader of a military engineering revolution. Her typical day involved overseeing production operations, reviewing research and development projects, briefing senior military officials, and coordinating with international partners interested in implementing Sarah's bunker technologies. The young lieutenant, who had once been told her ideas were too complex and impractical, was now advising generals and defense ministers on the future of military fortification. The international impact of Sarah's innovations was becoming increasingly apparent. Intelligence reports indicated that potential adversaries were modifying their artillery tactics and weapon systems in response to the demonstrated effectiveness of American bunker technology. The knowledge that American forces could now survive sustained artillery bombardment was forcing military planners around the world to reconsider their assumptions about conventional warfare and force protection. NATO allies were particularly eager to adopt Sarah's bunker systems for their own forward-deployed forces. The British Army had signed contracts for 200 bunker systems to protect their forces in the Baltic states, while Polish and Estonian militaries were implementing comprehensive base protection upgrades using Sarah's modular bunker design concepts. The bunker systems were becoming a symbol of NATO technological superiority and alliance solidarity. But Sarah's greatest satisfaction came from reports filtering back from military units around the world that were now protected by her bunker systems. Forward operating bases in Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the Pacific were reporting dramatically improved morale and operational effectiveness as soldiers gained confidence in their protection against potential attacks. Commanders noted that troops in bases protected by Sarah's bunkers were more focused on their missions and less worried about their vulnerability to enemy fire. The technological evolution of Sarah's bunker design continued at a rapid pace. Her research team had developed second-generation systems that incorporated artificial intelligence for threat assessment, advanced materials that provided even better protection while reducing weight, and modular components that could be reconfigured for specialized mission requirements. Computer simulations suggested that the newest bunker designs could withstand direct hits from weapons that would destroy even the original FOB Sentinel bunkers. Recognition of Sarah's achievement came from multiple sources throughout 2021. She received the Army Commendation Medal for her role in protecting American forces at FOB Sentinel, the Society of Military Engineers Innovation Award for her bunker design concepts, and invitations to speak at engineering conferences around the world. But the recognition that meant the most to Sarah was a letter signed by all 500 soldiers who had been at FOB Sentinel during the Russian artillery attack, simply thanking her for saving their lives. The letter, presented to Sarah during a ceremony at Fort Leonard Wood, read in part, "Major Chen, we cannot adequately express our gratitude for your dedication to protecting soldiers like us. Your bunkers didn't just save our lives. They allowed us to serve our country without fear, knowing that if the worst happened, we would survive to return home to our families. You represent the best of what military engineering can achieve when innovation is combined with genuine concern for soldier welfare." As 2021 drew to a close, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her from rejected innovator to leader of a military engineering revolution. The bunkers she had first conceived as a West Point cadet were now protecting thousands of American and Allied soldiers around the world, fundamentally changing the strategic calculus of modern warfare. Her impractical innovations had become the new standard for military force protection. But Sarah also understood that her work was far from finished. Potential adversaries were developing new weapon systems designed to defeat even advanced bunker technologies, requiring continuous innovation and improvement in protective systems. Additionally, her success with bunker design had opened opportunities to revolutionize other aspects of military engineering, from rapid runway construction to portable command centers capable of surviving in extreme environments.
The Advanced Fortification Development Center was expanding its mission beyond bunker systems to explore broader concepts of adaptive military architecture and autonomous construction systems. Sarah's team was developing robotic systems that could construct fortifications without human intervention, materials that could self-repair after sustaining damage, and protective systems that could be deployed from aircraft or naval vessels. Looking toward the future, Sarah envisioned a military where soldiers would never again be vulnerable to conventional weapons fire, where innovative engineering would provide such superior protection that potential adversaries would be deterred from considering attacks on American forces. Her childhood dreams of building structures that could protect people had evolved into a career dedicated to ensuring that American soldiers could serve their country while remaining safe from the increasingly sophisticated threats they faced around the world. The rejected engineer had become the architect of a new era in military force protection, proving that sometimes the most important innovations come from those willing to challenge established thinking and persist despite institutional resistance. Sarah's bunkers had saved 500 soldiers at FOB Sentinel, but her larger legacy would be the thousands of soldiers whose lives would be protected by the revolutionary approach to military engineering that her persistence and innovation had made possible.
5 years after the artillery attack that tested her bunkers at FOB Sentinel, Colonel Sarah Chen stood before a new generation of military engineering cadets at West Point. Her uniform adorned with ribbons that told the story of her remarkable career. The same lecture hall where she had once sat as a young cadet dreaming of revolutionary innovations in military engineering now hosted her as one of the most respected officers in the Corps of Engineers. Engineering is not about building things that work, Sarah told the assembled cadets, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen her innovations tested under the most extreme conditions. Engineering is about building things that work when everything else fails, when lives depend on your calculations being correct, and when there's no opportunity for second chances. The cadets listened with rapt attention, knowing they were hearing from the officer whose bunker designs had fundamentally changed military force protection and saved countless lives around the world. By 2026, over 5,000 of Sarah's advanced bunker systems were protecting American and Allied forces at forward operating bases across the globe, and her innovations had expanded far beyond their original scope to include automated construction systems, adaptive architectural designs, and revolutionary materials that could respond to changing threat environments. Sarah's Advanced Fortification Development Center had evolved into the premier military engineering research facility in the world, attracting the brightest minds from universities, defense contractors, and international partners. The center's projects now included development of underwater bunker systems for naval bases, hardened shelters for space operations, and protective systems designed for the extreme environments that future military operations might require. But perhaps the most significant impact of Sarah's career was not technological, but cultural. Her success had challenged the military's institutional resistance to innovation, demonstrating that revolutionary ideas could emerge from unexpected sources, and that established practices should be continuously questioned and improved. Military academies around the world now taught courses on innovative thinking and engineering creativity, using Sarah's bunker development as a case study in how persistence and technical excellence could overcome institutional skepticism. The bunker systems themselves had continued to evolve, incorporating artificial intelligence systems that could predict and respond to emerging threats, materials that could self-repair after sustaining damage, and modular designs that could be reconfigured for different mission requirements within hours. Third-generation bunkers being deployed in 2026 could withstand attacks that would have been unimaginable when Sarah first proposed her design concepts as a West Point cadet. International adoption of Sarah's bunker technologies had become a symbol of alliance solidarity and technological cooperation. NATO standardization agreements ensured that all alliance members could benefit from the most advanced protective systems, while technology transfer programs allowed trusted partners to manufacture their own bunker systems using Sarah's design principles. The bunkers had become not just military equipment, but diplomatic tools that strengthened relationships between democratic nations facing common security challenges. The human impact of Sarah's innovations extended far beyond military applications.
Her research into blast-resistant structures had led to improved designs for civilian buildings in earthquake-prone areas, hurricane-resistant shelters for disaster relief operations, and protective systems for critical infrastructure facilities. The same multi-layered protection concepts that saved soldiers' lives were now protecting civilians around the world from natural disasters and human-caused emergencies. Sarah's personal journey from rejected innovator to celebrated leader had also inspired a new generation of military engineers, particularly women and underrepresented minorities who had previously felt excluded from traditional military engineering culture. Her story demonstrated that technical excellence and innovative thinking could overcome institutional barriers, encouraging young engineers to pursue ambitious projects that challenged conventional wisdom. The mentorship programs Sarah had established at the Advanced Fortification Development Center were producing the next generation of military engineering leaders. Officers who understood that the most important innovations often came from questioning basic assumptions and refusing to accept that this is how we've always done it was an adequate justification for maintaining the status quo. As Sarah concluded her lecture to the West Point cadets, she reflected on the lesson that had driven her throughout her career. The most dangerous phrase in military engineering is good enough. When you're designing systems to protect soldiers' lives, good enough is never acceptable. You must always be asking, how can this be better? How can this save more lives? How can this give our forces an advantage that makes the difference between success and failure? The standing ovation from the cadets was immediate and sustained, reflecting their understanding that they were witnessing a defining moment in their education. Sarah's story would become part of their professional identity, reminding them that engineering excellence could literally mean the difference between life and death for the soldiers they would someday serve. After the lecture, Sarah walked across the West Point campus to the engineering building where her journey had begun. A plaque now marked the classroom where she had first presented her revolutionary bunker concept, commemorating not just her individual achievement, but the principle that innovative thinking should be encouraged and supported even when it challenges established practices. The young cadet who had once been told her ideas were too complex and impractical had become Colonel Sarah Chen, a leader whose innovations had transformed military engineering and saved thousands of lives. Her bunkers have proven that sometimes the most important breakthroughs come from those willing to think differently and persist despite institutional resistance. Standing in the spot where her career-defining presentation had taken place years earlier, Sarah smiled as she remembered the colonel who had initially rejected her bunker design. That same officer had recently written to congratulate her on her promotion and to acknowledge that he had been wrong to dismiss her innovations. Quote, "Sometimes," he had written, "the military needs officers who are willing to challenge our assumptions and force us to be better than we think we can be." Sarah's legacy would extend far beyond the bunkers that bore her name. She had proven that innovation and excellence could overcome any obstacle, that technical knowledge combined with determination could change the world, and that sometimes the most important military victories were not won on battlefields, but in engineering laboratories where dedicated officers worked to ensure that American soldiers would never again be vulnerable to conventional weapons fire. The rejected engineer had become the architect of a revolution in military force protection, demonstrating that persistence, innovation, and genuine concern for soldier welfare could overcome institutional resistance and transform how the military approached its most fundamental responsibility, protecting the men and women who served their country in harm's way. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.